Tonight, we drift slowly into a darker quiet, a place where forests stand still and shadows linger, where whispers once moved between stone and wind, a story not loud but deeply remembered, the hills of Pendle, where silence still remains.
In the quiet hills of Pendle, a village rested softly. Stone homes stood close beneath the pale sky. The air carried a cool, gentle stillness. Nothing seemed to disturb the calm surroundings. Life moved slowly and without noise. People followed their daily paths in silence. Steps were soft against the earth below. No voices rose above a gentle murmur. Everything felt balanced and steady, as if time itself had slowed. Near the forest, figures were sometimes seen, quiet, distant, and often alone. They moved slowly among the trees. Their presence remained uncertain, yet never fully unnoticed. The forest itself felt ancient and still. Tall trees stood without movement. Mist drifted quietly between them. No sound came from deep within, only silence stretching endlessly. Some homes stood far from others, separated by distance and quiet space. Their windows remained dim and still. No movement could be clearly seen, only calm and quiet isolation. Whispers began to move through the village, not loud, but slowly spreading. Small thoughts shared in quiet voices, nothing certain, only suggestion and a growing sense of unease. People spoke carefully and softly. Their words carried a quiet weight. Eyes moved but never held long. Something unseen filled the air, and no one spoke it clearly. Some names began to be remembered, quietly spoken, then quickly forgotten. Figures who lived at the edge, always near but never close. Their presence lingered gently. The paths became quieter than before. Fewer footsteps marked the ground. Time passed without interruption. The air felt heavier than usual and deeply still. Even the church remained silent. No sound echoed from within. The space felt distant and calm. Nothing disturbed its still presence. Only quiet remained inside. Fog began to settle more often. It covered the village in silence. Shapes became soft and unclear. Everything felt distant and slow, as if hidden from view. Some began to look toward the forest, not with fear, but quiet thought. Something drew their attention there. Though nothing could be clearly seen, the feeling remained uncertain. The deeper forest remained untouched. No paths clearly led inside. It held its silence closely. Nothing moved within its shadows, only stillness and time. Small gatherings became more common. People stood close but spoke softly. No voice rose above another. The air held quiet tension and unspoken thoughts. At the center, the well stood still. Water rested quietly within. No one lingered there for long. The space felt different somehow, calm yet distant. Evening came slowly over the hills. Light faded without resistance. The village grew quieter still. Nothing moved in the fading light. Only silence remained. Some lights stayed on through the night, dim and barely visible. No movement could be seen inside. Only a quiet presence remained, hidden behind still walls. At night, the forest felt deeper, shadows stretched without shape, the air became colder and still, nothing disturbed the quiet dark, everything remained unseen. The village rested in full silence, no footsteps echoed through the dark, windows remained still and closed, time passed without sound and without movement. Above it all, the hill stood quietly, watching without change or motion. The land held its quiet secrets. Nothing revealed itself openly. Only silence remained.
The quiet began to shift ever so slightly. Small gatherings formed in soft corners. People stood closer than before, yet spoke less. Something unspoken moved between them, a feeling not yet named but present. Whispers began to take clearer shape. Names were spoken gently at first, not loudly, but with careful intent. Each word carried a quiet weight, and slowly they began to stay. Some figures became more visible now, those who once stood at the edge. Their quiet presence drew attention, not through action, but memory and quiet observation. Eyes began to follow movement more closely. Simple walks were quietly noticed. Nothing was said out loud, but thoughts gathered beneath the silence, and slowly they remained. A single place became the focus, a cottage, quiet and apart. People looked toward it in silence. No words were needed. The meaning settled on its own. Inside, nothing appeared unusual. The space remained still and calm. No movement disturbed the quiet air. Everything seemed as it always had, yet something felt different outside. More people gathered near familiar places, the church, the well, the paths. Conversations grew slightly longer, still quiet but more certain. The silence began to change shape. Concern settled into quiet faces, not fear, but something heavier, a slow understanding without clarity. People carried it silently and did not release it. The forest drew attention once more. Its silence felt more meaningful now, as if it held something unseen, something connected yet distant and never fully revealed. Those with authority began to notice. They watched without speaking quickly. Their presence remained calm, but their attention deepened, and the quiet grew heavier. Words began to be recorded slowly, not many, but enough to remain. Thoughts turned into quiet records, each line holding careful meaning, nothing written without thought. Questions were asked in soft voices. Answers came slowly and carefully. No one raised their tone. Everything remained controlled, yet deeply serious. Some were asked to sit alone, observed without interruption. No judgment spoken aloud, only quiet watching and waiting. The silence did the work. Distance began to appear between people, not forced, but naturally formed. Some stood slightly apart now, not alone, but separated by quiet uncertainty. A place was prepared for gathering, not loud, not crowded, but ready. a space for quiet listening and careful words. The trial had begun to form. People arrived slowly, one by one. No rush, no sudden motion. They took their places quietly. The air remained still, waiting for what would come. A figure sat to listen carefully, not to interrupt, but to understand. Every word was received slowly. Nothing was rushed or forced. The silence held authority. Those named sat in quiet stillness. They did not resist or speak loudly. Their presence remained calm. The moment passed slowly around them, without clear resolution. The room stayed silent for long moments. Words came slowly and carefully. Each voice held weight and stillness. Nothing broke the calm atmosphere. Everything remained controlled. Beyond it all, the hill remained still, watching without judgment or change. The village rested beneath its shadow, holding its quiet unfolding story and waiting in silence.
The room felt heavier than before. More people sat, yet no one spoke loudly. Every presence carried quiet weight. The air remained still and unmoving. The moment slowly deepened. The listener at the center remained calm. No reaction came too quickly. Each word was allowed to settle. Nothing was rushed or interrupted. Silence guided the process. Those who were named sat quietly. Their presence felt distant yet near. No sudden movements were made. Only stillness surrounded them and quiet waiting. The village watched in silence. No voice rose above another. Expressions remained soft and still. Each person held their own thoughts, unspoken and heavy. Hands rested quietly on the table. No movement broke the calm surface. The stillness carried a quiet tension. Time seemed to pause gently and wait without sound. Words were written carefully once more, each line placed with quiet intention. Nothing was added without thought. The record grew slowly, holding every silent moment. Some voices were heard quietly, not raised, not hurried. They moved gently through the room, each word fading into stillness and settling into silence. Light entered through the window slowly. It touched the room without sound. Nothing shifted in response. The calm remained complete and deeply present. Many lowered their gaze softly, not in fear but in thought. The weight of the moment lingered, unclear yet deeply felt, and quietly shared. At last, a voice prepared to speak, not loudly but with calm certainty. The room remained completely still. Nothing interrupted the quiet moment. Everything waited gently. The decision formed in silence, not sudden but slowly shaped. Each thought placed carefully. Nothing rushed towards its end. Only calm understanding remained. Those seated did not move. No resistance, no sudden change. They remained as they were, quiet and still, within the moment. Outside, the village waited quietly. No voices rose in the open air. People stood, then slowly moved. The silence followed them without breaking. Paths stretched quietly into the distance. No footsteps marked their surface. The land remained unchanged. only the silence traveled forward, endlessly and softly. The hill remained as it always had, still and without judgment. It watched the quiet unfolding, without change or reaction, only presence. The homes stood quietly once more, their walls unchanged by time, yet something felt different inside, an absence soft and unseen, but deeply present. The forest returned to stillness. No movement stirred its depth. Mist drifted slowly again. Nothing remained to disturb it, only quiet and time. Life slowly continued once more. Steps returned, soft and careful. Voices remained low and distant. Nothing fully returned to before. The silence stayed. The land held the story quietly, without voice, without movement. Time passed over it gently. Nothing erased what had been, only softened it. And so the story settles into silence, not loud, not clear, but remembered. The hill remains unchanged. The whispers fade, but never fully leave. And the quiet continues. Morning returned, gently as before. Light touched the village without sound. A few footsteps appeared again. Life moved, but slower than before. The silence remained beneath it all. The houses stood as they always had, their walls unchanged by what had passed, yet something within them felt different, a quiet absence, hard to name, but softly present. Steps returned to the narrow paths, not many and never hurried. Each movement remained gentle, as if careful not to disturb the air or the memory within it. The well remained at the center, its water still and quiet. It reflected the pale sky above. Nothing stirred its surface, only calm remained there. The church opened once more. Soft footsteps entered its space. Voices remained low and distant. Nothing broke the calm air. The silence stayed within. The forest returned to quiet stillness. No movement disturbed its depth. Mist drifted slowly once more. Its presence felt unchanged, yet quietly remembered. The hill stood above everything, unchanged and unmoving. It held no voice, no answer, only quiet observation and endless calm. Time moved slowly over the land. Edges softened, shapes faded. The village blended into memory, not gone, but less defined and more distant. The story remained without form. No clear voice carried it forward. Only quiet remembrance stayed, soft and incomplete, like a fading echo. The sun set gently over the hills. Light faded into calm darkness. Nothing moved beyond the sky. Only stillness remained, and quiet memory. And as the hills slowly fade, another place begins to appear, not of fields, but of stone, where silence lives within walls, and time moves differently. Far away, a great tower stands beside a slow and quiet river. Its walls rise heavy and still, holding stories within their stone, stories that do not leave. The courtyard remains empty and calm. No footsteps cross its surface. The air feels still and distant. Nothing disturbs the quiet space. Only silence lives there.
Inside, corridors stretch into shadow. Light barely reaches their end. Every step echoes softly, as if time itself listens and remembers. Behind certain doors, silence deepens. Nothing moves beyond them. No voices pass through the wood. Only stillness remains inside, waiting quietly. Within one chamber, light rests softly. A simple space, quiet and still. Nothing appears disturbed, yet something feels present, unseen but softly close. From the window the night can be seen. The sky stretches calm and endless. Moonlight touches the stone gently. Nothing moves beyond the glass. Only quiet remains. A quiet presence lingers in the room, not seen clearly, but felt softly. It does not move or speak, only remains in silence, as if waiting. Here, a figure once stood quietly, looking beyond the walls of stone, not with fear, but stillness, holding thoughts unspoken, and time slowly passing. And here the next story begins, not with sound, but quiet presence, a night remembered without voice, within walls that never forget, and silence that never leaves.
Tonight, we move into a quieter shadow, a place of stone walls and closed doors where two small figures once waited in silence. A crown passed without sound or witness, and a night that was never fully remembered. The tower stood, quiet and unmoving. Its walls held stories without sound. Morning light touched the stone gently. Nothing stirred within its shadow. Only stillness remained. Inside, two young boys remained. Their world had grown smaller now. Stone walls surrounded their days. They spoke softly and waited, without knowing what would come. Their chamber remained simple and still. No movement disturbed the quiet air. Light entered, then slowly faded. Time passed without change and without answer. Beyond their room, corridors stretched far. No footsteps echoed along the stone. The air remained heavy and calm. Nothing moved through the silence. Only time continued. Far away, the crown rested quietly. Its presence carried silent meaning. Power moved without sound. No voice declared its change, yet everything had shifted. They looked beyond the narrow window. The world outside seemed distant. Nothing reached them from there. Only light and quiet sky, and endless waiting. A guard remained outside their door, still and without movement. No words passed between them. Only quiet presence remained, holding the silence. Evening came slowly once more. Shadows stretched across the room. The light faded without sound. Nothing marked the passing time. Only silence deepened. The beds remained untouched for hours. No movement disturbed their place. The room stayed calm and still. Time passed gently over them, without change. Night covered the tower softly. The sky remained clear and still. No sound reached the high walls, only quiet darkness remained, endless and calm. The halls grew darker with time. Light no longer reached their end. Everything felt distant and closed. No movement broke the silence. Only stillness remained. The door remained firmly closed. Nothing passed through it anymore. No voices, no footsteps. Only silence lived behind it and did not leave. The room slowly grew quieter still. Its presence began to fade. Nothing remained to be seen. Only memory held its shape, soft and uncertain. The throne room stood silent once more. No voices filled its space. The crown remained without question. Time moved forward quietly, without explanation. The tower held its silence firmly. No answer left its walls. The fog covered its presence gently. Nothing revealed itself clearly. Only mystery remained. Morning came, but nothing changed. Light touched the same stone walls. No movement followed the dawn. Everything remained as before, still and quiet. The chamber stood empty now. No presence remained within it, only space and silence. Nothing marked what had passed, only absence remained. Beyond the tower, the city moved on. Life continued without pause. No voice carried the full truth. Only quiet stories remained, soft and incomplete. The memory remained, but unclear. Two figures never fully seen again. Their presence faded into time, without sound or trace. Only silence held them. And so the story rests quietly, a crown taken without voice, two lives fading into silence, and a night never fully known, as the darkness slowly leads us onward.
Outside the tower, life moved gently. People walked, but spoke less than before. Something unspoken lingered in the air, a quiet question without form and without answer. Whispers began to travel slowly, not loud but quietly persistent. Names were not always spoken, only suggestions gently shared and never fully explained. Small groups gathered at quiet corners. No one stood too close for long. Words were exchanged, then faded. Nothing remained clearly stated, only a growing uncertainty. The tower stood, partly hidden in mist, its shape softened by the fog. Nothing revealed itself clearly, yet all eyes returned to it, again and again. The chamber remained closed in silence. No sound passed through its wood. Nothing moved within its space. Only stillness filled the room and did not leave. Records remained quiet on their pages. Nothing written spoke too clearly. Words stayed careful and incomplete. No answer formed from them. Only quiet gaps remained. The throne remained occupied, yet distant. Power existed, but felt removed. No voice explained the change. Everything continued silently. without clarity. From afar, the tower drew attention, not with fear, but quiet thought. Something about it remained unresolved, a presence without voice and without end. Night covered the city gently. Lights dimmed across the streets. No voices rose above the dark. Everything settled into silence, deep and unmoving. Their memory remained, but softened. Two figures slowly fading away, not gone, but less clear, held only in quiet thought and gentle uncertainty. The river moved slowly beside the tower, its surface calm and undisturbed. Nothing revealed itself within. Only quiet reflection remained, and passing time. Morning returned as it always did. Light touched the stone again. Nothing appeared different, yet something felt changed, quietly and deeply. The streets remained quiet and still. No footsteps marked their path. Time passed without interruption. Nothing disturbed the calm. Only silence remained. Some carried the story in thought, not spoken, but remembered. Quiet reflections held its shape, without certainty or end, only presence. The story began to drift away, not gone, but less defined. Time softened its edges gently. Nothing remained fully clear, only a quiet trace. Darkness returned slowly and gently. It covered the land without sound. Nothing resisted its presence. Everything settled beneath it into calm stillness. And as the tower fades from view, another place begins to form, far colder and more distant, where silence takes a different shape and a new story begins. A quiet land of snow stretches quietly, its surface smooth and untouched. No sound travels across it, only cold and stillness, endless and calm. A quiet structure stands in the distance, simple and unchanged by time. Its presence rests within the cold, holding its own silent story, waiting to be known. And here a figure moves slowly, not loudly, but with quiet weight, a presence both calm and uncertain, a story shaped by silence and time, as the night gently continues.
The land stretched out in quiet white. Snow covered every path and roof. Nothing moved across the frozen ground. The air felt still and endless and deeply calm. A figure moved slowly across the snow. His steps were steady and quiet. He did not rush or look back, only forward into silence and cold, still air. Inside a quiet space, he sat alone. The room held a soft, dim light. No sound disturbed the air. His thoughts remained inward and calm, yet distant. Others began to gather near him. They listened without interruption. His voice remained soft and slow. No word was spoken loudly, yet something held their attention. His gaze remained steady and calm. It did not move quickly. Those who saw it stayed quiet, as if something deeper was present and could not be explained. Paths stretched quietly before him. They led toward distant places. No sign marked where they ended. Only the snow and silence guided the way forward. Inside quiet walls, candles burned softly. Light flickered without sound. The space remained still and calm. No voices echoed there. Only quiet presence remained. People remained near him quietly, not close, but not distant. They listened without question. Nothing felt rushed or forced, only calm attention. Night returned across the frozen land. Light faded into soft darkness. Nothing moved across the snow. Only silence filled the air, endless and still. He remained alone once more. A single candle lit the room. Shadows moved slowly behind him. Nothing disturbed his stillness or his quiet thoughts. Far away, a palace stood in silence. Its halls remained large and still. Something there began to shift. A quiet connection formed, though not yet seen. He entered a new place slowly. No sound marked his arrival. Those around him remained calm. Nothing seemed unusual at first, only quiet presence. He sat among those of power. No voice rose above another. Everything remained controlled, yet something unseen moved quietly between them all. Corridors stretched long and silent. Light barely touched their edges. Footsteps echoed softly within. Nothing disturbed the calm air. Only quiet movement remained. Some watched him from afar, not with fear, but curiosity. His presence remained steady, unchanging and calm, yet quietly uncertain. Light flickered against the dark. Shadows moved without form. Nothing felt fully clear. The space held quiet tension, soft but present. He accepted what was given to him, without hesitation or question. His movements remained slow. Nothing seemed to affect him. The calm stayed unchanged. Something shifted beneath the calm, not seen but quietly felt. The air grew slightly heavier, yet nothing broke the silence. Everything remained still. Snow fell softly outside the walls. Each flake touched the ground quietly. No sound followed its fall. The world rested in stillness, cold and calm. And still, he remained unchanged. Through quiet moments and passing time, his presence did not fade easily. A figure held between calm and mystery as the silence continues forward.
Morning returned to the frozen palace. Light touched the snow without sound. Nothing moved across the still ground. The air remained quiet and cold,
and deeply calm. He moved slowly through the halls, each step soft against the stone. No voice followed behind him, only silence walked beside him, unchanging and still. A quiet room waited ahead. A table stood in soft light. Nothing seemed out of place. Everything appeared calm and carefully arranged. He sat without hesitation, his posture steady and relaxed. No sign of concern appeared, only quiet acceptance remained, and stillness. The cup rested quietly before him. Nothing moved within its surface. It waited without sound, a small moment held in time and calm uncertainty. He drank slowly, without pause. No change came to his face. The moment passed gently. Nothing seemed to shift. The calm remained. Shadows moved softly along the walls. Something lingered beneath the quiet, yet nothing became visible. The air stayed heavy, but still, unspoken and calm. He rose again, unchanged. No weakness showed in his form. His presence remained steady, as if nothing had touched him or altered his calm. The corridor stretched into shadow. Distant shapes remained unclear. Nothing moved too quickly, only quiet motion in stillness and waiting silence. Night returned once more. Snow fell gently from above. Each moment passed without sound. The world rested in silence, cold and endless. He stepped into the quiet night. Snow beneath his feet remained soft. No voice called out behind him. Only darkness followed his path, and calm stillness. Something shifted, gently and slowly, not loud, not sudden, only a quiet change in the air. The moment passed without sound and without clarity. Nearby, the water remained still, its surface calm and dark. Nothing disturbed its quiet form. It reflected no movement, only silence. The ground showed no clear sign. No path remained behind him. Everything returned to stillness, as if nothing had passed or ever been there. Morning came slowly once again. Light touched the silent snow. Nothing moved across its surface. The world remained unchanged and deeply quiet. His presence faded into memory, not gone, but less defined. A figure held in quiet thought, without clear beginning or end. Only mystery remained. And as the cold begins to fade, a warmer land slowly appears. The snow softens into sand. The air shifts gently and quietly toward another distant place. A vast desert stretches outward, its surface smooth and endless. No sound moves across the dunes, only wind, soft and distant, and timeless calm. Hidden beneath the sand, something rests, untouched for a very long time. Its presence remains quiet, waiting without movement and without voice.
And here the next story begins, not with sound, but stillness, a place long sealed in silence, where time has gently rested and something quietly remains.